Welcome to Women of the Wise Path, a place for fostering open discussions about womanhood in our new world paradigm. We are a collective of holistic practitioners, coaches, and leaders devoted to supporting women as we navigate the shifting landscape of our times. Through conversations on health, culture, spirituality, motherhood, partnership, business, and transformation, we intend to spark connections, bridge generations, and share wisdom about what it means to support women of today. Welcome to Women of the Wise Path.
Welcome back to Women of the Wise Path, where we create space for honest conversations about womanhood, wisdom, healing, leadership, and what it means to become more fully ourselves. Today, I'm joined by someone I actually went back and realized I had the pleasure of meeting like 3 years ago through networking, Shoshana Leopold of Shoshana's Healing Arts. So Shoshana and I had one of those first conversations where you realize very quickly that you have more in common than you first expected. We had connected around our shared backgrounds in education in New York City, and then we got really to learn about very different paths that our lives have taken since then. So Shoshana's work now brings together holistic healing, reflexology, coaching, intuition, and a deep respect for the wisdom of the body. So today I'm excited to reconnect with her, not just to talk about what she does, but about the woman and the wisdom behind the work. So Shoshana, welcome to Women of the Wise Path. I'm so glad that we finally get to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Toya. It's a real pleasure. And when we met, it was an instant connection. And then we had, in addition to everything that you said, we also had the connection of knowing, um, Dr. Monroe,
Hmm.
and that was this icing on the cake that we had
Yeah,
a connection.
yes,
So yeah.
absolutely. So when you think about the woman you are today, what parts of her were already here in the younger Shoshana?
I love that question. So, my background is as a Jew. I'm Jewish, and and I grew up with a really keen connection to freedom. In many ways, that's what Passover is all about. My spirituality has taken another path. I have taken another path in my spirituality, but the whole idea of working for freedom and living a life which is focused on freedom and what's called tikkun olam, which is to repair the world,
Mhm.
can trace my my path backwards and think about how that so grabbed my attention as a
Mm,
young person. So that and my that was always an aspect of, well, if we're supposed to repair the world, then it resonated with my sense of
mm,
needing to go beyond, needing to question, needing to uh, make connections that I may not have seen before.
mm.
I'm a rebel. I've been a rebel since a young age, I think. My father's no longer with us to ask, but I think he would definitely agree with that. And my position in my family probably helped also because I was conditioned to be a middle child. There's a lot of conditioning we all face.
Mm,
We just are raised in a certain dynamic because that's how our parents learned or what our
mm,
parents unlearned, and then we were
mm,
raised in a certain dynamic. So all of that came together where I began early to focus on change.
mm,
Then the 60s came along, or maybe it was concomitant because I can't tell you exactly what age I did all this, but the 60s came along and there was another effort in the larger world to change things, to change the way things were.
yeah.
And I resonated with that, so became part of an organization which turns out to have not been so positive, but there were a lot of positive things that came out of it, and that was what would now be called a social justice organization.
Got it. So the common thread is the rebellion towards freedom and towards healing in general, right? Like healing society, healing humanity. Um, Tell me more about like your when you talk about freedom, what does that mean to you?
I love that. So, healing humanity was my first foray or my first focus. Fast forward many years, I realized that I have to have a sense of healing. It's necessary for me to heal something if I'm going to work with other people to heal. I
Hmm.
don't do the healing.
Mm,
I hesitate to call myself a healer, but I am because I don't do the healing. The person does the healing. I'm a facilitator, I'm a vessel, I'm a teacher, and I'm a guide.
mhm,
So, how freedom means to me, one of the things that freedom means to me that's really important is that I am not, or maybe the primary one, is that I'm not a victim to my own thoughts as they occur, or
mhm,
to any conditioning from the outside or the inside. That I can make choices to either embrace or eliminate
mm,
what is what how I react or what's going through my mind and my heart. So for example, as a young woman, as a 16-year-old, whenever womanhood develops but begins, but I remember being a very angry kid,
mm,
and that organization I am referring to um, had a lot of it. I would say it was a place to express my anger, and there was a
mm,
lot of anger, and understandably, this was the '60s. People
yeah,
were saying things have to change in racial relations. Things have to change in male female relations,
mm,
and I understand where the anger comes from. But what I learned later on is that staying angry is a trap. Being
mm,
angry is a place to explore and
mm,
a place to understand who you are and who you want to be. But staying angry and acting out of anger, and I think it's controversial for me to say it, that's a trap. That's a way to be trapped. That's not
mm.
freedom.
On that piece, it sounds like you're saying that the anger is a signal. The anger is a symptom maybe to explore, but not something that you should, or maybe not should is not necessarily the right word, but that if you if you stay in the anger, it traps you in reactivity, maybe, and limits you in your reaction. So you're saying that the anger is more so a tool that we can use to discover something deeper? Is
I think so. I think that's a really good way to understand. It's not quite, but it's a good way to understand. Um, there's when I grew up, we weren't supposed to have our feelings.
mm,
And then we all said, well, wait a second here. I want to pay attention to my feelings. And that's partially a woman thing because in the more traditional male world, you stay in the linear brain and not in the emotional brain.
hmm, hmm,
Women tend to be more in touch with our emotions.
hmm,
Um, but that has a downside to it because, like you said, if you stay in an emotion and are reactive in that emotion, then it really it really trips us up.
yeah,
Now, my daughter and I have this conversation periodically because she is in a different place, and we really disagree over this. So I think there's a group. I think that there is still that notion out there amongst people that you got to be able to have all your emotions.
mm,
So that's where she and I depart, and the family dynamic is unimportant, but um, it's just an illustration of where I am. It doesn't mean that I'm not emotional or that I
mm,
don't value emotions. I just don't want them to lead around. It's like leading the horse by the tail. That's going to
yeah.
be painful for the horse.
And that goes back then to your definition of freedom, which you describe as being able to choose which programs or conditioning or labels we've been given, if we want to choose or reject them, that's freedom, right? And then you identified yourself as a healer despite being like not so sure if that's the right word or not being fully comfortable with the language of it. But when did you first kind of lean into that definition of yourself as a healer?
My great aunt would say, um, when I was giving her back massages, but that, in retrospect, there was a point, and I could go back and figure out exactly where it was, where I started to get frustrated as an educator. And I said, well, I'm a healer and I do it through education, which is perfectly valid.
Mm-hmm.
But so when was that? That was probably in the late 80s or early 90s, um, where I wasn't letting myself dream the dream of doing healing work. And I did read Starhawk's book. What's the name of it? Oh, I'd have to go back. But she had in this book, she has a woman who is a healer who works with the bees. Have you read that book?
I don't think so.
And and there was this whole scenario where she's communicating with the bees and they're helping her. Uh, and I don't have all the details in my mind, but
Yeah.
I really identified with that. And as a woman, it's nice to say my kid was probably 3 to 5 years old, and it was like Christmas week or something. Her dad took her away for a few days, and I got to
Hmm.
sit there, no kid, no husband, reading my book, eating Indian food from the local Indian restaurant. Um, but I remember then I was like, I really like that. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So maybe that's when I started to think of myself as a healer. But I was frustrated. I was frustrating myself. I didn't walk around frustrated, but I frustrated that impulse to
Mm.
explore. And then I became then I decided finally that I wanted to be trained in healing. And a friend of mine who we were raising our kids together, and we went to the same school, and uh, she was training to be a homeopath. I was I had, as a mom and as an individual, as a mom, wife, and individual, I had been involved in exploring acupuncture and chiropractic because I had
Mm.
health issues,
Mm.
and I'm not I hadn't explored homeopathy yet. Oh yes, I had explored a little bit of homeopathy,
Mhm.
and she was studying to be a homeopath, and I was like, oh yeah, that is so cool. So
Mhm.
that's when I stood up and be counted, and I, as a result of the fact that that training was going to start in several months, I decided to get training in foot reflexology.
Got it.
So that's what stuck. I mean, I love homeopathy, love it, but I didn't choose to practice as a homeopath after my training, and I did choose to practice as a reflexologist.
Gotcha. So it sounds like this has been a flow of evolution, right? And your work from homeopathy, like you said, and acupuncture and chiropractic and reflexology and holistic healing, coaching, intuition, and other modalities, I'm sure, right? What connects all those pieces for you?
Yeah, you had mentioned that question to me before, and it's a little bit tough um, to see the connections. Now, it's easy for me to see the connection with my background in science, with my experience as a reflexologist, because I'm fascinated by the human body.
Mm.
Myself interested as a healer probably is what ties those things together.
Mm.
Um, and there's a little bit of being a woman thrown in there, my desire to nurture people, which I had to really um it was a little bit, how can I put this? I've always wanted people to help people change. I mean,
Mm,
ever since I can remember, certainly since I was 14.
right.
And then there was but do I love myself enough to really do this work and to help them? Do I have enough sense of
What,
self-worth?
what do you mean by that? Like, what do you think was a prerequisite for your own relationship with yourself before being able to help and
Well, I did help, and I did work that was helping work, but I think that all along I was developing the ability to love myself. And what I've learned, I mentioned this before, that as a healer, it's really important to heal. What is the expression? Healer, heal thyself.
hmm
So now when I'm doing coaching where I help women and men to to eliminate the thoughts which block them from creating what they want to create, the next step in their life. If I'm still feeling messed up about that same issue, then I'm not doing them the service that they need. I'm not doing them the
mm
quality, giving them the quality service that I think they deserve. And
mm.
so I've got to work out my own stuff in order to help other people work out theirs.
That makes a lot of sense. And so speaking of that, what have you personally had to unlearn or remove in yourself in order to become more, first of all, more fully you, but also then able to help others?
And I'm going to also add more human or more nice or something. So anger was one of them, anxiety and depression. Lots. I want to kind of emphasize the anger because of the time that we live in. Not to emphasize being angry, but to emphasize that we live in a time where we're really paying attention to inequality, but and paying attention out of anger as opposed to recognizing anger and processing it
hmm
is is so not conducive to healing. That's what I want to say. That when you stay, another aspect of staying in those negative emotions in the lower frequencies, it's not conducive to healing. Healing ultimately we've got to be in love.
hmm
And that's where I came together with the my spirituality started to blossom after I had a kid. No surprise there, and that's part
Right,
of being a woman.
right.
Um, but like if I when I approach change more from the head, then and obviously the heart because the emotions are the heart, but the head and the emotions, and didn't include spirituality in it. I couldn't really I couldn't really play the game out of love.
Mm.
That's I think that can be very destructive. So I feel like that's part of what's happening today. I don't feel like it. I know it that we're cultivating anger in this society and we're duped by that. And that's
Do
becoming
you,
controversial too.
ish, I guess should it be controversial though? But I'm thinking it's more about anger. Do you see anger kind of like the opposite of love? Is it in that kind of opposite ends of the spectrum thing?
So I didn't think of it that way, but I don't think you can stay angry and stay loving.
Mm.
So I, I say conditionally, I say yes, and now I have to think about. Now you've told me something. As as you are ever the teacher.
I've heard like fear is the opposite of love.
Well, maybe there's
I'm
more than
wondering
one.
if, and maybe, and I had a conversation, an interesting conversation I had the other day, um, where the point was made that anger is a symptomatic. It's not the real emotion. It's the outward show of something else, but anger is not the primary emotion, right? So maybe the fear is, and anger is what we see manifested most often in our society right now. But is that a symptom of a deeper issue? What are your thoughts on that? And you said that we've been duped and we're cultivating all of this anger. So where is that coming from? What do you think is
I,
the real issue?
God, you get into heavy things, don't you, Mama? I
Just,
love it. I love
just
it.
digging,
Um,
just digging in.
yeah, just dig. Um, I think you're right. I feel like I'm saying all this conditionally because there's a lot of people better equipped out there to respond to this. But um, I think that you're right. I've kind of heard the same thing and when I think about the anger that people are breathing in and out today, I don't know. I honestly don't have a clear answer because I feel like anger is being cultivated for the sake of anger because it splits, it alienates and divides. So
That's what I'm
love is
thinking.
unifying. So at least in that way, they're opposite.
Yeah,
A
that's what I
lot
was
of time,
thinking.
yeah. I mean, that's why I think people are being duped. Oh, you're going to get me started in a political conversation, but um,
Yeah, I mean, we could try to dance around that a bit, right? Like, okay, when you talked about the 60s, right? And that whole vibe was a lot of anger, right? But the anger was the outward show of the fear and the division, like you said, right? So there's tension around race, there's tension around male-female relationships. So and those are still present in our society. And maybe even gasoline is being poured on them in some ways that are artificially, you know what I mean? Because these are
totally.
topics that I talk to people all the time. And, especially these days, the political landscape and people are finding ways to be like, I'm over here and you're over here. But
You know, sorry,
no,
go
go,
ahead.
go.
It I feel sad when I hear when I think of what you just said. It's true. I believe not in conspiracy, but that there are. It's going to sound like conspiracy, but I think that that gasoline is being artificially poured on it. I absolutely agree with you. And when it comes to understanding the ability to live together in a peaceful, harmonious way, I think that this has we've lost sight at very best we've totally lost sight of that as a possibility. It
Mhm,
is more than possible to respect difference and to live in a respectful caring way and have the freedom of being able to live your way and live alongside people who live their way.
mhm,
When we say um, you are not allowed to live your way, and that's what's happening, you're not allowed to speak your way,
mhm,
don't think that way.
mhm,
If you are labeled as a in some ism.
mhm, mhm.
That's that's not what the 60s, for example, was about. Not in my
Yeah,
book. And I feel very strongly and feel sad that that's how it's developed. And yes, I think a lot of it is outside sources of
yeah,
gasoline.
yeah. So when you think about that, like there are at least a handful of areas in which people can find ways to separate themselves from others, right? To be on the other side of some issue. There's all these different topics, but at the core, we're more alike. And like you're talking about, it's not necessarily difficult to love and respect one another, even though we do have difference. So when you, especially in your work, right, you've worked a lot and very closely with the human body. What is what has that kind of work taught you about human beings that you couldn't have learned intellectually?
Well.
Hmm.
um, so one thing is I learned that energy, when we talk about energy, it's real, that we are beings of energy and that we can transmit energy to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I learned is that there's an energy of love that we can experience. Um, I learned that it's not the only place I learned it, but I learned that there's divine forces that are communicating with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's funny you said, would that make you more human? Well, that makes me more spiritual, but it makes me more connected with my higher self. So if we, that's one definite. I guess you could define that as human, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Like what does it even mean to be human? That's a whole
Yeah,
other
right. That's our
conversation.
next conversation.
But you said, speaking of spirituality, you said that when you gave birth to your daughter, that also gave a deeper birth to your spirituality, right? So how does that work? Like, what role do you think, maybe just like reproduction has in the spiritual life of a woman?
Well, I think I can only speak for me.
Mm,
Um, I mean, it's a deeply, deeply connecting experience to be pregnant.
mm-hmm,
To just think that there's this little life inside of me. And I remember when Ilana first swam across my belly. I can remember it so well, like the little
mm,
flutter feeling. I can tell you where we were, what we were buying.
mm,
So that, I mean, you could be very intellectual about it, and say, oh, the egg and the sperm met, and then the egg develops into the fetus, and da, 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 and so that would be highly intellectualized. But behind all of that is this miracle of life that's growing inside of me, in that case, or inside of a woman. And there are certainly scientists who are deeply enmeshed in science
mm,
who are deeply connected with God. And I think, I mean, I'm just juxtaposing the two. And I was not connected with a sense of the divine and of God.
mm,
I tried and it was like it fell flat. It was really interesting, I remember, but that's because the way that I was trying didn't work for me. And it
mm,
was more through an intellectual trying than
uh,
an intellectual avenue. So then when Ilana was born, and and I don't know how old she was, but I remember walking around thinking there's a God, there I feel this energy. I feel
mm,
God energy. And
mm,
going to my rabbi and talking to her about it just before what we call the high holidays, and
mm,
like, I have got to talk to you
yeah.
about this now, because I got to figure out what I'm doing for this religious thing. um Now, I don't think you have to be religious to have a relationship with God at all, not at all.
Mm, mm,
um but anyway, I think that's where, I think having a life growing inside of me, and the awe of that, and the looking at it now, the lack of boundaries, even though having a baby is a very boundary bidden thing. I mean, oh my
mm,
God. But the sense of expansion, like I can
mm,
just get into that now. It's like you're really expanding, and I don't mean physically.
yeah,
Like I could feel that now. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And I celebrate everybody who decides that having a baby is the thing that they
yeah.
want to do.
And you said that um you don't think that it's necessary to go through religion to experience spirituality. And I think what makes sense about that, when you talked about having um the divine guidance, right? And to experience life being created through you is not intellectual at all. But religion is intellectual, right? So it seems like that in a similar way, you know what I mean? Like you could talk about the science of childbirth. You can talk about, in an academic sense, the Bible or whatever religious text, but you cannot replace the experience of like co-creating life, or you know what I mean? Like that speaks directly to the divine and the expansion that you talk about. And I could feel that and I could revisit those moments in my own life as well. Like whenever I'm seeking to feel gratitude, I go back to the moment when I gave birth, you know, not it is, it's beyond anything. Like I can read books about childbirth, I can look at pictures and videos, but when you actually have that feeling of my physical body is a conduit for whatever is the vortex, you know, like the space, the energy that this is coming through, and that is a direct connection, you know, it's a direct connection to the higher source of everything, right? So when you think about intuition, or I don't know if that's what you call it, but you said like divine guidance, like what role has intuition played in your life, and how have you learned to distinguish intuition from fear or conditioning or wishful thinking?
My current spiritual teacher, who is also the developer of this work that I do, of the work that I do, she
Mm-hmm.
created it, and it's a brilliant body of work that she created. She has, she says, how do you know if it's, if it's you're in connection with your higher self, your God self,
Mm-hmm.
if it's going towards life,
Mm.
then you know that. And I think that that's been very helpful to me. But your question takes me to other places, which is I remember one time doing reflexology and it was so clear there were other hands guiding me, like absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not sure I'm answering your question. Am I answering your question? Because I think I'm taking a little bit
I think all
late.
of it is answering my question.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you. And there are times that I'm not the kind of person. There are some people who say they pray and they hear God, right? I don't think I'm exactly that kind of person.
Mm. Mm.
But what I've come to understand and now I'm cultivating is I hear a little voice. Like most recently, I remember I was helping somebody who was having some physical illness and recovery. There were two of us helping, and I drove by where the garbage can was that had been collected and it needed to be moved in order for it to be collected properly.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a voice. I mean, I heard the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, stop and move it for them. It's not a big deal, but it'll be really nice gesture. And I
Mm-hmm.
drove on and I said, no, I'm going to pay attention to this. And I came back and I
Mm-hmm.
did it. And it was a really nice gesture.
Right.
And that was when I heard the thought as not my own. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
my own because it was my God's thought, but it
Right.
wasn't my own because it didn't come from my small self.
Gotcha.
And I've had that's the kind of experience I have.
So it's like a nudge, a knowing, and the more recent realization is that if it's nudging you in towards love and life, then
That's before I was aware of feeling the nudge. That
mm,
information
mm,
about if you're
uh,
making a decision, is it leading you towards life?
mhm,
And then you know that you're connecting, you're moving towards connection with God. Does that,
wonderful. It does. Yeah.
but I love how you said it, a nudge, nudge, a little quiet voice. It's not a big bang. Although
Yeah.
when you don't pay attention, you could get some big bangs along the way. I have. Oh my God, so many.
Yes, yes, yes. But when you say moving towards life,
Yeah.
that makes me wonder, like, because I was thinking more like moving towards love, but is that the same thing? Like when you say moving towards life, is it like the same as moving towards like a oneness, a connection?
Well, it can be more simple. I mean, yeah, the answer is yes, but at the same time, it can be just, am I going to eat this cookie? Is that moving me towards health and life? Or is it moving me towards making a stupid decision to have sugar in my
Mm,
body?
mm, got it.
So that's not so intellect. I mean, so that can be more intellectual, but ultimately, there's probably a message there floating
Yeah.
around that I don't want to hear.
I get that. And I like when you said that sometimes there can be a big bang when you don't listen to the nudge or the knowing. And I've experienced that personally in my journey through motherhood and each of my four girls and who I was at the time of their conception and their birth. And I've grown through when I had my oldest, I was 19, right?
Wow.
And when I had my youngest, I was 36. So th those are two entirely different versions of myself, right? And there were things that I didn't listen to with my first because I was still hearing all the noise and of society and family and things that you're supposed to do. Whereas towards the end, I was like more fully in myself, right? So I've personally evolved as a woman through this process, and I know that things have changed tremendously for women across decades, right, of our lives. But when you think about women across generations today, what gives you hope and what concerns you, if anything?
I grew up in an affluent neighborhood with affluent parents where my mother was a housekeeper. I mean, my mother's job was house.
Mm,
She wasn't, by the way, the housekeeper. She was only that she had somebody who could help keep the
right.
house. But she was in general, she was responsible for the house. She was responsible to support my father. And then the 60s came along, and like women were supposed to go out and get a career and do that kind of thing. And I kind of feel like I got a little bit caught in the middle. So I wasn't so I went into education because it was kind of the natural thing to do, and I had a natural inclination towards that, where like in summer camp I did educational things.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, how have I evolved? That I kind of was in this precipice way, not clear on what was available to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in education way too long from the point of view that I was a round peg trying to fit myself into a square hole. Although
Mm-hmm.
I was always a rebel, and that helped because I had like the perfect rebel job.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to. I mean, looking back at it, I explored as to the limit what it was to be, well, somewhat traditional. I didn't get married early. I didn't get married till I was 30, but be a teacher because that's a natural, and you didn't have another
Mm-hmm.
option. And even though
Mm-hmm.
I had trained in biology, I think I had actually cognitive issues going on that made it really hard for me to focus and read and do all those things. Or maybe it was just
Mm-hmm.
the bright and shiny object syndrome. I don't
Yeah.
know, before it was named that. Um, so I was thinking I was going to get a doctorate and be a research scientist, but that wasn't right either. So
Mm-hmm.
so I stayed in education even though it wasn't quite right. And then the idea of being a healer came out of me, and I was I oh, and I had jobs where I was healing science education for sure. I was in that
Mm-hmm.
mode of healing, helping to heal women's experience, mostly women, because mostly women were elementary, but also men
Right.
in junior high school teachers. And then I was able to say, okay, I've honestly, I've lost enough jobs that it's time to get real, because I was certainly smart enough to hold down a job,
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly loved kids enough, but I couldn't. But I kept like blowing it when it came to bureaucracy and paperwork.
Mm.
So it was time to say, it's time for me to work on my own, and the reflexology is good enough that I can build a business. So for me, it was just an evolution of trying different things that I thought I was supposed to do, or that somehow there was an impression, a conditioning that would be right. my sister took my older sister took a whole nother way,
Mhm.
but not me. That was the way I did it. And then I hit up against the limits. And then I started to make conscious decisions. I started to
Mm.
make I made the decision of doing the reflexology. And when I started to feel like, why my business isn't growing anymore and I don't feel excited anymore,
Mm.
I was able to say, all right, reflexology is no longer for me. I love it, but it's not for me anymore.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So it sounds like you were saying that there are certain expectations of what women were expected or permitted to do that you tried and then realized like there's actually a whole world of other possibilities out there. Um, and I feel like we're going through that right now as women of realizing like there are limits that have been placed on us that we're exceeding or we're at least investigating beyond in a different way than when your mom was first married, right? So our kind of big question in the Women of the Wise Path is like, what does it mean to you at this point in your life with all your experience to be a woman?
So I'm thinking about both the question that you asked about what's going on with women and what's open to women today, um, and what does it mean to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to answer the first one first. Um, what I want, I think all kinds of opportunities are available to women in this society. And when we look to other societies and we say, um, we look what's going on in there, I really want people to understand, to cherish the freedom that we have in this society. Because I think that we've lost that.
Mm.
Um, women can, sexuality, um, whether they have kids or not, what job they want to pursue. We have freedoms in this country that are just not available in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to just say that because I feel that is a political, but it's also a moral statement.
Yeah.
Because I think people forget that in all the frustration. I also want to say that if women decide they want to have babies and motherhood is their primary thing, I want to support that because how we raise our children and how we have our children is very, very, very important. You and I both know as educators and moms.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to say if women decide not to have children, that's okay too. That's fine. Just do it consciously and do it out of
Mm-hmm.
a place of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'll get step off my soapbox. So you're asking, what does it mean to be a woman? Let's see. What does it mean in my life currently to be a woman?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really funny because when you ask all these questions about how being a woman has crafted my life, I'm inherently a woman. I feel like a woman. I act like a woman, but I don't think primarily of myself as a woman. Now, part of that is because I work alone in my house. I don't have a large social circle. Um, Part of it is being 73. You know, um, I don't have to. It's like the color purple.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I get old, I'm gonna wear purple, but now I'll start. I can't say it poetically. You probably can as a literary person. But if you haven't read The Color Purple, I definitely suggest to people they do it.
Yeah.
Um, like it doesn't matter to me whether I'm allowed to say it anymore because I'll say it wherever I think it's appropriate, like I have today.
Mhm.
But I'm a mother. I'm inherently a mother, and that's womanhood.
Mm.
I'm inherently a healer, and I think that comes from my womanhood, but men can be healers too. Um, I grew up with conditioning, which is still conditionings, which are still part of me. I still have, oh man, how come I have a belly? I'm not as attractive. I got to put on my makeup, the whatever insane stuff we have about women's looks.
Mm,
I definitely still see that in myself. Um, and coming from a place of rebelling and, anger and resentment and all that lower vibrations, I have created a certain level of freedom for myself, having that as a background. So I can help other people. Um, I can see in other people where they're having conflicts
mhm,
that they can rise above or eliminate, because my
mm,
work is about, you don't have to always have it lurking in the background. You
right.
can really heal it. And so with all of that, having those experiences as a woman, I can help people heal that, because ultimately what I think my work is about is kind of standing as an entity in your own power in the way that makes sense to you and is in a loving place. Because if it makes sense to a person to be destructive, I'm not going to support that.
Right, right.
But it's not to be uninformed about your gender, but it's to have all those things come together in an integrated, balanced, happy way. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
I got you. I got that. I got that. Your work is about helping people to be more free and more connected into themselves, into the higher self, into the source, and into their creativity in a way, like being able to create their reality. I mean, like when you say like to be able to stand fully in yourself and to make conscious choices about it, that is to be in a creative power. So it sounds like what you're saying is like what it means to you to be a woman is to have the freedom to heal, to serve, to help other people to have that kind of clarity in their decisions, to be able to be free from limiting emotions and literally just eliminate them, not to sit and talk about it and hash it out necessarily, to actually get rid of it so that they can be untethered and move into the direction that they want to go.
Right, and limiting thoughts. Um, Thoughts come before emotions,
Mm.
and thoughts create reality. Do thoughts come before emotions? I think so. I have to. I have to
Yeah,
go
I'm
look
thinking
at
about
that.
that one now too. I'm like, which one is first? Which came first, the emotion or the thought?
Well, what I do know is thoughts matter, and if thoughts become matter. So if I think it, it's there in my life. Um,
But your work
so
allows people to eliminate the thoughts or the
that
and or
those are.
emotions that create outcomes that they don't want.
Oh wow, you said it so beautifully. Exactly. I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yeah, well, we could just rewatch this too, and this has been amazing. This has been fun. I feel like we just danced, energetically through space together, and this has been fantastic. Any last thoughts, words, ideas that you want to leave people who are listening?
Yeah, two. One is you are an amazing interviewer who has a real sense of structure and clarity of focus, and at the same time expansion. We expanded together because of the way that you did your work. So thank you.
Mhm.
And the other is in my work role, I say, please know that we don't have to suffer. We can hurt, but we don't have to keep building that hurt. The more we focus on the hurt, the more we suffer. So we can actually create life the way we want it to be, as women, as people, as anything. We have that right and we have that ability. Go out and find out how to do it by staying out of the victim mentality. That's you don't we really can stay in the victor mentality.
Mm. Thank you, my friend.
Thank
This has
you.
been so good. Overdue. I really appreciate you. I'm grateful for you and for the time that we spent together and for who knows how many people will help through this conversation. So thank you so much, Shoshana, for your time.
You are so welcome.
Thank you for joining us today for Women of the Wise Path. Continue the journey with more conversation, events, and resources at the address below. We'd love to hear from you and what you would like to talk about. Together, we're shaping a future rooted in wisdom, collaboration, and the infinite power of the feminine spirit. Until next time, may we walk all together the wise path, guided from within.